All right, so I've already rolled out a slab. I didn't think I needed to record that. Just a reminder, you need your sticks on either side of your clay so your rolling pin can touch it, and then you roll it out until it's as thin as those sticks. Make sure you're on a cloth, otherwise you'll never get it off the table. What we need to do is make 4-inch squares, and to make a cube, you need 6 of those squares. I'm just getting a rib tool because I'm going to clean up my slab right away using that round edge just to get those cloth marks out. You do want to make sure that your slab is, the clay that you used was wedged really well. You don't want your clay to be super sticky. So make sure you took the time if you needed to. And I made the measuring really easy for you. I just have some 4-inch strips cut, but you definitely still need to use a ruler. And we're just going to measure, well, not measure, but we're going to hold the straight edge against the 4-inch strip and make cuts all the way up the slab. And then we'll flip the strip the other way and make 4-inch cuts all the way across the slab. And then we'll end up with 4-inch squares, hopefully a couple extras. If you rolled smaller slabs, then you will have to just, take up your extra clay, re-roll it out to make some more squares. So I'll fast forward this. All right, so now we finished doing the cuts, both horizontally and vertically. First thing I'm going to do is just remove the ones that are not perfect cubes. And I rolled a very large slab, so I'm going to have a lot more pieces than you probably end up doing. But if I didn't have enough, if I didn't get like 6 good cubes out of this first time rolling, I would just take these extra scraps that I have, wedge them together, and re-roll out a slab and repeat that process. So now I want to get my board so that I can lay my slabs out. Remember, we're working with stiff slabs, so right now our clay, since it's fresh from today, is still considered a soft slab, which is not ideal to work with. But we're going to place these on our board, making sure we push down the corners. You don't want them to be curled up. And if you need to use 2 boards for this, get 2 boards. Just make sure you pat down all those edges. And it's always good to keep a few extras if you have them, or even just a few extra half slabs too. You can use those later for cutting out shapes, attachments, or what have you. Just arranging them to fit more pieces. Again, making sure your edges are, if you want to layer them, just put a piece of paper between and then stack them up. Now we need to let these sit because they are very, very flimsy, okay? So that's called a soft slab. Soft slabs are great for when we're trying to bend them into a certain shape, but we're trying to make a nice crisp cube. So we need our slabs to be much stiffer. So what I'm going to do once I've laid these all out is I'm just going to loosely bag them until next class. If it's Friday, or Thursday, we're going to fully bag them because I'd rather them be too soft than too dry. We want to avoid the dryer box with these. They get too dry too quick, so we're just going to let them naturally. Okay, so now my slabs are leather soft. Okay, so I could still bend them if I wanted to, but they are firm enough to hold their own shape. unlike that one that you saw that I was able to curve, that was a fresh, soft slab. The ones on my board are now stiff slabs. There's a very specific way to attach these to make it a cube. So you're going to put 2 on the top edge. So I'm scoring where those 2 are going to go. And then 2 on the outside edge. And at first it'll look uneven, but I promise you, this is right. This is how you get a cube instead of a rectangle. With this project, it's very important that you think about where everything is touching and that you're slipping and scoring all those areas. Make sure you're scoring very aggressively so you're getting nice gouges in the clay so that they want to regroup together. I'm going to start with my 2 on top. Every time I score, I place it and I give it a little wiggle to kind of lock in those grooves. And then it's going to touch on that wall, so I'm going to score there for the next one. So the construction of the cube itself is the most time consuming here because we need to make sure that we are properly slipping and scoring each touching point of the clay. So good gouges, slip. And then wiggle those edges, everything together. Focus on just pressing it on the edges, not in the middle of your slab. And you'll see there's a little overhang. That is what we want, so that means you're doing it right. Okay. Before we get too closed in our cube, we're also going to reinforce our seams. So we're going to roll the teeniest, tiniest little coil of clay, so a little snake of clay. And we're going to place it in anywhere we see a seam. And then we're going to blend it until you can't see it anymore. And now we're going to put the other 2 walls on. So remember, if I put these last 2 walls on top of my base, these next 2 are going on the side of the base. And it's going to look wrong, but I promise you this is how we get a cube. So make sure you're thinking, where's everything touching for this next piece? Score and slip it up. Again, make sure you're focusing on pressing those seams together, just on the edges, so you're not making any dents to the middle of your walls. Again, constructing the cube itself is the most kind of time consuming, but very important for its structure. So this wall will look a little shorter than the others, and that's exactly what we want. It's on the edge of your base. And then let's get the last one on. So lots of slipping and scoring. And then we're going to do the seams again too. All right, so I had all those coils in the seams smoothed away. Now I'm scoring everywhere that this top piece is going in. So it's going to kind of slide in like a lid, but we're going to make so it's a solid cube. So it's going to be touching on the outside of 2 edges and then on the top of the other 2. So it's like the opposite of the bottom. So I'm just scoring every little part that's touching. And when I press that on, I'm also only going to be focusing on those edges. I'm not going to press in the middle of my cube or any of that. I want to just focus on those walls where the clay is touching the clay to make sure it's bonded today. And then that's how we made a cube instead of a rectangle. And then there'll be some parts that have like a little tiny gap that we're just going to fill with some soft clay too. But right now, see, I'm just forcing on those edges, cutting off the little overhang that I have from properly building the cube. So now we just want to make sure everything is, crisp and together. We're going to get rid of all the seams. So again, just focusing on those edges, trying to crisp it up. I don't want to be pressing in the middle of these squares because I'm going to dent it and it's not going to be a cube. So I'm just gently shaving down anywhere that there was a little bit of excess, and that's going to help seal those seams as well. You could also get a paddle to help if your pot does get a little off, off shape. You can just kind of gently paddle it. So we're just crisping up the box. Should still be leather soft. So paddle and a rib tool, paddle and a rib tool. Where you see like the little, like you can see on this corner right there, I have a little gap. I'm going to put a little piece of clay in there and just smooth that away too. So anywhere you have a tiny little gap, which you should have one if you built it right, you're just going to roll a little ball of clay and shove it in there. So I'm just working to clean up this box by using the rib tool, a paddle, getting it as cube-ish as possible with no visible seams. And now that the cube is assembled, we're going to create the lid. So you want to take the small rulers, the skinny ones, not the flexible wide ones, and we're just going to make a line measuring from the top of our box all the way around. So I'm not cutting right now, I'm just making a line. So you can see, just trying to be even. And then we're going to take the fettling knife, make sure it's clean. Shouldn't have any little crusty dusties on it because that will make a mark on your lid cut. So make sure you just insert the knife and then slide with it. Don't do any like sawing. So you're just gliding, trying to follow the line as close as you can. If you veer off a little bit, don't freak out and start over. Just take your time, go slow, especially on those corners. So slow it down real slow once you're getting close to where you started so you get a nice even cut. And then what I recommend is giving yourself a line so that you know which way this lid goes on for right now. We won't keep that, but it'll just while you're working. Now, once you open it, you'll see there's areas where you don't have coils in the seams because of putting on that last piece. So go ahead and make your tiny little snakes and get coils in all those seams on the inside. We actually don't have to put any coils in the seams on top of the lid because if we're going to make the slide lid, we're going to be handling that anyway. Right, so now we're going to make the part that keeps the lid inside of the box. So we're calling this a lid slide. So a slide in lid. This is where it comes in handy to already have saved a square of slab. So I kind of already have these leather soft pieces that I am just cutting to the same height to put inside of my top piece of my lid. If you needed to roll a new slab today to make that, then that's fine. Just I would dry it up a little bit. So we're going to be attaching that to the inside of the lid. So I'm scoring around the whole sides of the lid as well as a little bit on the bottom. And then I'll have to score the sides of the pieces as well as the bottom as well. And then just cut it to fit properly, focusing on squeezing it in on the score marks. And we're going to repeat that for all the sides, cutting and measuring, cutting and measuring. All right, once you've got it all attached, we're just going to clean it up a little bit. You gotta be very careful with this so that you're not flaring it out. It needs to be very horizontal, this slide, so that it will slide into the box perfectly. If you have any gaps, you can patch it with little clay. And then I'm just using a wooden modeling tool with a flat edge to kind of crisp up any seams. I also want to blend the inside um, of that slab that I attached into the lid so it looks like it grew out of it. I shouldn't see a line on the inside. So any gaps you can fill with a tiny bit of clay, since our clay should still be leather soft, should not be leather hard. So that's what I was talking about, blending that in. So I'm just taking the back of that modeling tool, taking a little bit of that clay and blending it down into the lid. We'll do that all over it, and then smooth it away. You'll notice that not everything is perfectly clean and crisp the whole time I'm working on it. Remember, some things are easier to do when your clay gets a little stiffer. So right now we're focusing just on getting it constructed and making sure it's going to stay constructed and not crack and fall apart as we keep on working on it. So leather soft is the desired state still at this point. Whether it took you a day to get here, 2 days, 3 days, you need to keep it leather soft until you're done constructing. So what you're going to notice when you try to fit it on is it's not going to slide in perfectly. And that's because we added those coils in the seams. So right now our edges are a little rounded. So we got to go in with a fettling knife or a loop tool, whatever tool you would prefer to get into those corners and kind of crisp up um, those edges so that it will slide in there. And think about how far down you have to go doing that because of how deep or shallow your lid rest is, your lid slide is, sorry. So once I get that crisped up, I should be able to get it to slide right in. And then it's really important that you leave the lid inside, like attached, while you're working on your decorations, because we want these to like slowly start to dry and shrink together so that they stay, that they stay fitting properly. If we leave the lid off the whole time that we're working on attachments or carvings or whatever, they're going to dry at different rates, which means they're going to shrink at different rates, which means they might not fit at the end. So I want to leave that lid on while I start doing all my decorations, which you know how to do. You can attach a handle.
So
So once it's all constructed, you get the lid rest. This is the part that you really already know how to do, doing your fun attachments, carvings, piercings. So just making sure you're scoring every little thing on and remembering that attachments are best done at leather soft, carvings are best done with leather hard, same with piercings. So just kind of mapping everything out, getting it where you want it, properly attaching everything. And then of course we'll clean it all up at the end once it's all leather hard with a little bit of water. Remember, water should never be used until it's definitely leather soft. That technique I showed you for the cylinders about like you can cut things off and trace them onto a slab, or I could even trace it right onto the side of my wall to do carvings. All those techniques you can still utilize if you need something printed. Just send it in a doc and we can get it printed to the printer during class. Just make sure you're sizing it properly. So like our sides are 4-inch cubes, so you definitely won't want to print it teeny tiny or anything gigantic. So make sure you're sizing it in the doc so that it's ready for you. Okay, so this is just a quick fast forward of some of the things I did, making like the Spider-Verse theme box.